Welcome back to Alone Together podcast, where the loners aren't alone. I'm Journey.
And I'm Layla.
And as you guys can see, today we have a special guest, Marquez Price, my uncle, best-selling author of My Train is on Schedule and From the Observer to the Observed, which y'all can get at Barnes & Noble and on Amazon. So, welcome him. So glad to have him here. And as hopefully you guys know, well, now you will know, November is Men's Health Month, and my uncle just so happened to be here visiting this weekend, so what better time than to highlight men's health, men's mental health, than to have him on the podcast. So, yes, we're just going to get straight into it, asking questions, getting to know him and about his life. So, first question I have for you is just tell us a little bit about how you came into being a writer, being that you dedicated so much of your life, to basketball and, living in a small town where we come from, that's not a huge thing. So I'd like to hear a little bit about how you realized writing is your passion.
It actually spun off from a premonition I had at about 16 years old. We had a basketball banquet, and I got there early, and I was in the cafeteria, and it kind of hit me, kind of like the mortality of your sports career. And I said, if I don't make it to the NBA, if I don't do this and that, what am I going to do? And I said, well, I have a passion for writing. And I sat there and I listed the things that I wanted to write about. And years went by. And it always kind of nudged at me because people saw my gift and they said, you really need to pursue that. And that's why the topic, or the title, I should say, the first book is My Train is on Schedule, which pretty much means you're always on schedule.
It's true.
Your own journey, your own path. So when the time was right, I stepped out and did it.
I think that's a huge thing for a lot of kids, or a lot of people our age, is what is my purpose? Because college is capitalizing on your purpose and learning how to monetize your purpose. But it's we're so young still. We're 18, 19, 20. How are we supposed to know our purpose? And we're still in our teens. How are we supposed to even go into college knowing what we want to do?
Yeah. And I don't think everyone has that clear purpose where it's this is my gift and this is what I know I want to do. And
we've talked about that so many times.
Even adults sometimes have jobs and they're not sure that this is exactly what they want to do. So I think it takes time. But like you said, My Train being on schedule, I think everyone kind of has a rush to find their purpose, but sometimes you just gotta wait and it'll come to you.
That's so true. And I feel like people who are just kind of different, gifted, they don't have a singular purpose. I think I read something and it was each stage of your life is a different purpose. Maybe right now it's just, my purpose is to just be a motivating force on my campus. Who knows? Or my next stage is going to be helping my community. Who knows? But what is a purpose? Or I think there's a difference between a calling and a purpose in a way.
Yeah.
Because a purpose can change. But I think a calling is your grounding point.
Yeah.
And you must answer a call.
True.
We delude ourselves with societal influences. You got to have everything figured out by 12 years old. And that's just not life. There are countless stories of people who discovered their purpose at 60 years old.
Facts.
Some kid that was a prodigy at 4 years old, but burned out at 20.
Facts.
So you take your own route and you embrace it as you go.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting, how you said prodigy, because I think that's a huge thing, especially in sports. So many kids, they're the prodigy kid, but they're a kid and they're a prodigy. What happens when they're in college? Are they still the prodigy, or did they plateau in high school? Did you peak so young? And then it's facing that purpose, well, what now?
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, when did you actually start writing your books and start bringing your talents into fruition? Because you said you knew when you were 16. So what shifted and made you actually start putting it into action?
Well, I've got scrolls of writings, notebooks from the time I was in high school. I just kind of wrote in the dark. And I sat on my gift, my talents. So when the world kind of shut down, we all went into quarantine, the pandemic, I could no longer run from my gifts. And, you know, like Journey said, that calling was knocking. And it was like, you're not going to ignore me anymore. You know, you can't vehemently deny this. You can't act like I don't exist.
Yeah.
So I went to work. I locked myself in the house and I just wrote more. But I did the other side, which is researching the business aspect, the social media, the promotion, the marketing, all of those things that come with it, because it's not just your craft. You know, so many things branch off of that. And you have to prepare for it. So once I decided to do it, it was on.
When was the moment that you knew, like, I need to do this? Like, because I know COVID was a hard time, but like, what was the fuel? Because you knew you had the gift for so long. So what was holding you back?
Yeah.
Just life, you know, fear. A lot of things are fear-based. I didn't know how to do it. That's the main thing. You know, I had all these writings and I'm like, well, how do I get it out? You know, how do I get with the publishing company? You know, where do I get the exposure? And then it clicked like, wait a minute, we live in an age where we have the internet.
Yeah.
You know, and I started I went to YouTube University and I started looking at stuff and I said, oh, I can do this. Like, this is feasible. So once I got that, it was like,
I think that's a huge thing nowadays, especially in the Black community, is the lack of knowledge, like the lack of just resources and just simply not understanding that there's resources everywhere. Like, I think if it wasn't for my mom, like, working on a college campus my whole life, I would have never known, like, what it takes. How many resources are on a college campus and just what it takes to even do it. And that's like 80% of people out there. Like, they just don't know and they have this gift, but it's like, how do I put it into action? Like you said, I thought that so many times, like, how do I turn my passion into my life?
But it really is all online now.
Yeah.
We're doing a little internship on video journalism, and they were basically saying nowadays you have as much reach as like a television channel, and it was never like that before. But just with YouTube alone, like, if you just put stuff out, you have the ability to reach so many people. Like, look at Issa Rae, for example. Like, she started on YouTube and she was able to reach an audience, and now she's on HBO. Like, you could reach so many people, and there's so much information out there for anything you want to find. And like you're saying, you looked up like publishing companies and stuff. It's like, I looked up stuff about writing books too, and like just looking up the process. And there's so many YouTube videos telling you like how to go to a publishing company if you want to do it on your own and just like release it on Amazon. So it's literally step by step out there for you. I think it's just a matter of like putting in the work and the time and effort, and a lot of people don't want to do that.
Facts.
Yeah, you have to spend an inordinate amount
Sacrifice.
of time. Yeah, you have to sacrifice. You really have to live it. You know, it's not a recreational thing. Again, back to piggyback off of the calling, purpose. Like, there's nothing recreational about that. But when I did it, I said, I'm muscling through it on the independent way. And when I dropped my first book, I just released it on my personal Facebook page. But at the same time, I was building a website, a Facebook author page, and Instagram. Because before that, I was like, I don't want to be on that many pages.
Yeah.
But I announced it, and within 48 hours, it became a bestseller.
Wow.
People were buying 10 copies and spreading the word. So it's so much access. Like, there's abundance everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's from within. Once you tap into that, then everything is infinite as far as what you want to do and touch.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I feel like it's when people really start to live like their dream, like, and really, but also back it with the work. Like, I feel like, you know, yes, chase your dream. Everybody should, but like, you can't just chase. Like, you have to really put in the work to get it, because it takes a lot to be a #1 bestseller. It takes a lot to have a huge audience on YouTube. Like, it's so much that goes on behind the scenes that people don't know. But even though it's so much, it's rewarding in the end, for sure.
And a lot of people just see like the progress from someone else and neglect the journey. And I think a lot of people, that's why it's important to talk about your journey, because people think that it's just easy and they think they can do it without putting the work in and get mad when they don't see the same results. But There's so much work
Facts.
that goes in behind the scenes to get to any goal for anybody.
I think
in the path, not to cut you off, the path isn't linear. You know, you're going to have switchbacks, setbacks, everything. You just have to have an indomitable will. Like, I really want to do this. I'm not stopping.
Yeah.
And once I allowed that to flow, and
took off.
Yeah.
I think a huge thing that has been a theme of my life this year has been like discipline, and now it's starting to transform, I feel like, into sacrifice. Like, there's so many things I want to do, and I feel like I've built up a solid like self-discipline, because self-control is everything, but like actually sacrificing and like taking the time, like saying no, I'm not going to go out, or like actually no, I'm going to work on my homework, but then after that I'm going to put in the work for my other outside of school stuff. And it's like, it's a lot, but like we said, it's rewarding. Like, it'll take off now, and if I do it now, then I'll have way more leisure time later. But so my next question that I want to ask,
And just before you get to that next question, I want to say I'm very proud of y'all, because this podcast is the manifestation of what an idea came from. You know, 10 years ago, we'd have been watching people on the news, you know, saying, "Oh, I wish I could be on TV," but now we have our own TV.
True.
So make it work.
That's so true. Wow. Yeah. I think about that a lot with school. Like, I was literally just 13 saying USC is my dream school, like whatever, and wearing the merch like every single day, literally, but not thinking nothing of it, having the USC lanyard like my whole life. And I feel like those little manifestations, like, I'm here now, you know, like, and it's crazy to think about that, like just the little dream we have, but now we're living it. And it's like, who knows what the next dream I'm going to be living is.
Yeah. And the podcast too, it really was just an idea at first. Like, we would just say like, we should record these conversations we're having, and then look at everything now.
And that dream, you know, you have to remember that it's generational, it's ancestral. Like, when I was in junior high, like, we come from Tucson, Arizona. I love Tucson, Arizona. But we were wearing merch from other schools. I was wearing USC. I was wearing UCLA. You know, so to see my niece and, you know, her good friend attending those schools, like, that's like a wow moment.
It is a wow moment.
That's pretty cool.
And I think just coming from Tucson and being here is like a wow moment for me every day, because all of my high school friends are still there. You know, they're still in Arizona, which is nothing wrong with it, but I knew that wasn't for me. And I'm just blessed to actually have the resources to live my dream.
Yeah.
But, okay, so on your social media, you made a post about how at one point in your life you were like extremely depressed. And, you know, we all go through those stages, but I just want to talk about how you overcame that, how it was, maybe what fueled the depression, and, you know, just that journey of getting out of it.
And also, how do you think depression affects your creative process? Because I know some creatives kind of think that depression like helps them in their creativity, so they kind of almost allow themselves to be depressed because they think it's helping with their work. And how do you feel that affects your creativity?
You had Billie Holiday, you know, from back in the day, jazz musician who thrived off of it. Ernest Hemingway, you know, writer. Earl Sweatshirt now, like, he thrives off of grief and depression. But yeah, it's absolutely a creative tool, because you're more introspective. Like, when you're depressed, you're sitting in, you know, a sadness, you know, or your anger, you know, or whatever. So it does fuel you. But with what you said about, you know, the depression that I went through, it loops back to what we talked about earlier about our purpose and our calling, and how society puts that pressure on you. You got to achieve this and that by this certain age, whatever. So I was always a kid that was precocious. I was very good at a lot of things early. And I had a lot of lofty goals, you know, from when I became an adult. So at one point in my life, I realized I hadn't achieved those goals. I hadn't followed through. And that's what became an existential crisis for me. And that's when the depression set in, you know. In depression, you know, we put a negative connotation on it, you know, with, you know, some of these things that are like epithets, like they're crazy. But depression is actually the common cold of psychological disorders.
Yeah.
So anyone on this planet is, they're not exempt from depression.
Right.
You're going to go through seasons,
Right.
and it's normal, but it's just how you weather the storm and communicate and talk and open up, to get help, and help can just be sitting and talking with your friend.
Yeah.
I went to see one of my best friends last week, and I asked him, I said, hey, how you doing? It's been a minute since I've seen you, whatever. And the cliche response is always, oh, I'm good.
Yeah.
But deep down inside, we're not always good.
Yeah.
But he's a straight shooter, and he was like, yo, man, I'm not good. And I was like, well, I'm available. Like, I don't care what time it is. Like, you need to reach out. You don't need to reach out like I'm pressuring him, but it was like, yo, just tap in with me. Don't go through it alone, because I know what that feels like. Especially, in our culture as Black men, as Black women, we're supposed to have this exterior, like we can weather anything, and we're human just like anybody else.
Right. So what do you think was the cause of it?
Living in my own head, ruminating with those expectations. Like, I didn't get there. I didn't, there's a part in the movie, Pursuit of Happiness, and he's talking about, I had all these goals, these dreams, and I became a man, and I never did one of those things. And it was like, it clicked. And he was like, I know what I want to do now. And he took off. So for me, I went from that to kind of being down on myself, like, oh man, I didn't do those things. To, what are you talking about? Like, you're still young, like,
there's still a chance.
Go,
Yeah.
And I would just delve into these stories about people who did these extraordinary things. There was someone I was reading about, they were suicidal at 69 years old.
Wow.
Failed marriage, estranged from their kids. And they said, I'm going to try one last thing. And they made a recipe, and the recipe took off. It happened to be Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Wow.
Colonel Sanders, yeah.
Wow.
That's crazy, actually.
So I always think about when it comes to
life is
time.
crazy like that.
No,
bro.
like,
69 years
imagine
old.
if that didn't happen.
So
I don't know if I'd be
lived,
here.
yeah, I think he lived to be like in his mid 80s, but he got to see that company take off and go national, global, and now it's a household name. They got it like
In Jamaica, they had KFC on every corner. That was
Costa
their
Rica,
McDonald's.
they had KFC.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's never too late. 69 years old. Y'all probably can't fathom 69.
I can't.
I don't want to.
Yeah,
Literally.
So
Literally.
but one day we will. You keep on living, like
You
the
do.
old head told me, keep
Every
on
day.
living, you're gonna see it. So
I think that's really deep how you said living in your own head, because I feel like that is like the common thing I see with my friends who are like depressed or sad or anxious, experiencing anxiety. We're all experiencing that, but it's really simply because of your thought process and how you're training your mind and what you're letting your mind do. I feel like the mind, you can control it. Like,
You can.
It has its own, its own
your
little
navigation
voice,
system.
but like you have the power to manipulate it.
Yep.
And figure out, like, if you're sad, you have to always look on the bright side and just train your mind. Like, it's hard, but it's like you rather train it or you rather wallow in your thoughts for the rest of your life and be stuck in your head. Like you said, you have to make that decision. That click has to come. And I feel like that came for me in high school, experiencing depression the first time, going to therapy. Like, you just get to that point where it's like, I don't want to feel like this. Like, I want to be better. I want to be living like how I should be. And that's when you start changing your mindset, I think.
and
I
therapy
think-
is cool.
Yeah, I
You
think
need to
that
get to notion.
regret mixed with like living in your head is a dangerous combination.
Regret
That's
is
where you
huge.
see those like really long depressive states. In our friends, I see it too, but regret is like a really hard feeling to live with.
And that's why the antidote is
Living in the
let go.
past.
Yeah, you gotta let go. You gotta live in the moment. All depression is
It's
connected
the
to
past.
living in the past.
And anxiety is the future.
Yeah, anxiety is the future, so you have to hold in the present. Because I've seen people zombie out, just walk around aimlessly. Like, I remember high school, and it's like, high school? Bro, that was 10
That
years
was
ago.
literally,
Like,
yeah.
what are you talking, But some people get stuck there. And it's not to look down, on that, but because that's really normal.
Yeah.
A lot of people are on that. I mean, but it just takes time to really train your mind, like you said, and just it's no different from walking a dog. Like the dog will lead you astray wherever it wants to go until you train and say, "Hey, go in this direction. You can enjoy our walk." That's your mind.
Facts. And it's difficult. It takes work, and I think that's what our generation especially doesn't want to do. Is put in the work. They don't want to work. Period.
Yeah.
Yes, especially because of social media. I think everyone's seeing careers take off on the internet, but it's just like I don't think we're seeing the temporariness,
And we're also not seeing like the fact that maybe it's a couple people's careers that take off, but how many people are trying to do the same exact thing and it's not taking off?
Literally.
Think of oversaturation of rappers.
Yeah.
How many rappers y'all see on campus?
A million.
A lot.
Rip them, right? So think of all those rappers are trying to funnel into one area.
Literally. And it's like, I think that's interesting you brought that up because I was talking to my friend and he makes beats and I was just thinking to myself, like, so in the music industry, there's so many different things. Everybody's trying to be the star, but like, there's so many other parts to it. There's the producer, there's the writers,
Marketing.
there's the marketing people, the managers. Like, you don't have to be the star. You don't have to be the rapper.
Yeah.
You can be in the music industry. You can be in whatever industry you want to be, but maybe your calling isn't the rapper.
Yeah.
Maybe your calling isn't the star athlete. It's the coach.
Yeah.
It's the assistant.
And I think the problem is people will try to go into different like aspects of the industry just to be in it. But when you kind of have the intention to be the star and you think it's going to work out that way, you're not going to be successful in whatever you're doing.
Facts.
Like if you're going in as a marketing or A&R and you want to eventually be a rapper, you're not going to do well as a marketing or A&R because your intentions are somewhere else.
Facts. The
You just gotta
intentions.
adjust. You gotta adjust. And I mean, two of my favorite rappers, I love to, give shouts to Cash Lansky and Tommy Will from back home. They're doing it and really successful at it. So it can be done. So that's not a knock on any rapper.
Yeah.
I'm saying that's oversaturated, but we all can understand and relate to.
For sure.
I wanted to ask, you mentioned how you were talking to your friend, asking him how he's doing, and he was able to tell you that he wasn't doing well. When do you think, do you think when you were younger, it was harder to have those conversations as a Black male to actually talk about being depressed? Because I feel like men are more prone to suffering in silence when it comes to depression.
Yeah.
They don't want to speak out about it. So when do you feel that you were able to express your emotions and express what you were going through?
I wanted to ask this.
It wasn't until later because, as Black males growing up, it was like, don't cry, don't be soft or weak.
Yeah.
You got to be able to, it's either be the prey or the predator, and you're being hunted at the same time, in America. So having that awareness, it's like, I don't got time to talk about my feelings.
Yeah.
I think the best example of that, you're aware with Kendrick Lamar's last album, the song Father Time.
Yeah.
And he's talking about his relationship with his father, how, like, if he fall down, it's like, get up. We ain't got time to lay down, whatever, So it's just stuff like that. But it's compounded with us because what we've had to overcome in the past.
Yeah.
Yep.
But we need that balance. Like I said, like, there needs to be like a campaign, like therapy is cool.
Yep.
Facts.
That
there's a brand in LA. I'm waiting on the drop, and it says every nigga deserves therapy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that needs to be on every Black man's back this year. Because y'all need it. We need it as women, but the men need it because they're the ones who are drilled on don't be weak. And even growing around that, my dad even put that on me because all he did was raise boys before me. So on me, it was just like, I'll never forget one time my dad told me, like, if you ever feel lonely, like, that's an emotional weakness. Like, feeling lonely is being weak. And like, as I got older, it was like, I always would like push that out. Like, I'm not lonely, but that was when I had to find it in myself. Like, I'm comfortable with being by myself. I'm comfortable with being alone with myself. It's not about being weak. It's just some people aren't comfortable in themselves. And that's a huge thing. I think it's not about being weak. It's just they don't know how to show their emotions. So it's just like, put it away. But what's the point in that? Because we're all human. Like, that's what makes us human.
Yeah, we're all human, and
but we
the
don't.
paradox is you're never alone. Hence the title, Alone Together. So you're absolutely never alone. Once you learn that, then it gets a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. When do you think that you were able to be vulnerable and show your emotions and, be that point of reference for your friends?
Relationships. Like women have always been my greatest teachers through my relationships. And really everybody in life is your teacher. Mm-hmm. The person that can touch you and trigger you in a negative way, that's your teacher. Mm-hmm. True. The person who can hold your anger, that's your master. Mm-hmm. They can manipulate you and do whatever they want to do with you. Yeah. So just through women, like I was still not being vulnerable. And I met certain women where it was like, nah, like you got to open up. And I think that's when it started. I'm glad it happened that way.
What do you think is the greatest lesson that a woman has taught you in a relationship?
The greatest, say it again?
The greatest lesson a woman has taught you in a relationship. Or maybe like an overarching theme that you've learned in relationships.
Timing is everything. With a woman, she will make herself indispensable to you, but once that time is up, it's over.
True.
And
I know that's true.
Men tend to get it, later. Like, I think I wrote in one of my writings, and I said something to the fact of, I was a visual learner, and she was auditory, telling me time after time I'm going to leave, but I didn't get it until I saw her walk away.
Wow. That's deep. I like that. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I like that. Yeah.
That's my greatest lesson. So.
Wow. Yeah. But facts. Interesting. I used to always ask my uncle growing up, when are you going to get married? When are you going to have kids? That was always the first thing I'd ask him every time I see him at my grandparents' house. But on his birthday or my birthday, I sent him a message like, I get it now. Like, I understand why you don't have that. Like, we have to figure out our own lives first before we can even think. And it's like, you were going through that depression way later in your life, and some people are going to have that in their 40s, in their 50s, like you said, in the 60s. But until we fully get ourselves together and feel like, my life is together, no relationship's going to prosper, I think.
Exactly.
No, your exact words you said. Remember, I used to ask you that, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah. And you were like, I think you have to answer your calling before you can align with somebody, in a partnership. And you were speaking in general, but obviously it applies to you as well. Yep. So that was heavy.
Timing is everything.
Yeah.
Time is not real, but timing is everything.
Yeah.
Alignment is everything. How about that? Maybe not timing.
Yeah.
So when did you start coming into your spirituality? Because, your mom, Nana, like very religious church, but growing up, you never would go to church. I never see you at church, but I wasn't too older. And when I got spiritual and I realized you were too. So when did you, realize that was you more so?
Actually church. I always liked church. I like going and, the sermons. I still like going and catching sermons, and just the emotion that's evoked from, especially black choirs. But as a kid, I was so wrapped up in basketball. I was going with my pops to go to the gym on Sunday. They play on Sunday. So the gym was my church.
You used to always say that too when I was little. The gym is church.
The gym is my church. But I was age 16 was a magical year for me because I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and I had a world history class, and we started learning about Judaism and Hinduism, and I was like, yo. So I started researching, and I was like, they're saying all the same things.
Facts.
Exactly.
I discovered that most bloodshed in the history of humankind has been from religion, people fighting about religion. So that's when I kind of disengaged, and I said, well, spirituality is more of an individual walk, and not to knock anybody who's religious, because, I've gotten gems from everybody. My mom, but that was more of my path. I started going into research and reading different things, and that's when I opened up.
Facts. I think it's the same for me. My 15 was my year, like my sophomore year of high school, when I had world history and our summer reading was Siddhartha. And like that book, I don't know, I got so into it. Like everyone I remember going back to school, they were like, yeah, we just read the summary, but I really liked it and I really gravitated towards Buddhism. And ever since then, like it was my sophomore year, like my spirituality took off. Like you took me to the gym show. I got crystals, not even knowing what they were. And then one day I lit incense and I was like, these stones mean something. Yeah. And it just took off from there. And I was researching Buddhism. I was learning about it in school. And like you said, they are literally all teaching the exact same thing. It's just,
their way of teaching it.
Yeah.
I think I was attracted to Buddhism because when I was learning about religions, it was the one religion that was spread peacefully. And
I like that.
It wasn't like one specific book teaching Buddhism. It was everybody teaching it in their own way and just spreading it peacefully. So I really like that. And the emphasis on like meditation and healing yourself rather than like an old set of rules that may not apply anymore because we're moving forward.
Yeah.
But I think it's really emphasizing like finding yourself to come to enlightenment, which I think every religion emphasizes, but people take it in their own way and misinterpret it and take it to extremes. And I think that's why I like Buddhism, because like the extreme of Buddhism is just completely being in like with yourself, being a monk. And that's super peaceful. So I like that.
That's a good way of putting it. It's spread peacefully. I never thought of it like that. I always like Buddhism because it's like, it's just a set of like teachings. It's just like, here's some nuggets of wisdom that you should live by instead of.
Yeah, I think like the way I learned about religion was interesting because it was a human geography class. So we learned how like each religion spread, and like Christianity was spread through like people coming to Africa and saying like you have to be Christian,
bloodshed, literally.
Yeah, bloodshed and like stuff like that. So Buddhism was just spread by people spreading the religion because they wanted to, and it was like word of mouth and peaceful rather than like you have to be a Buddhist, you have to do this. So
that's so true.
That's something that I liked about it a lot. That's fact.
Yeah, and I didn't like that when I learned that, And again, not to knock any particular religion because they're all useful, and like you said, it's really predicated upon the interpretations where it goes amiss. But when I was reading Malcolm X and I started learning like how there were a lot of conquerors and they spread the religion that way. And I was like, nah, like that's not,
that's not what they're preaching.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's a huge thing with religion, like, or people who stray away from it is like the hypocrisy of it. But I think religion is so individualized. Like as I've gotten older, like I'm very spiritual, but I'm also very religious. Like I love church. I pray every single day, but because I found my own like interpretation of it.
Yeah. And I think you have to find your own interpretation of it. Me and Journey always say like the Bible, the Quran, any religious reading is just like wisdom and lessons, and you pull from it for your life. But it's not like it's strict, like this is exactly what you have to do.
It's
but
not
it's just
the book of
an
life.
Overall wisdom and knowledge that you could use to like take with you throughout life. And I think you could pull from all of them. Like
this kid asked me not long ago, we were having a conversation. He said that he was raised spiritual. His mom was raised hard Catholic, and she was like, I hate like the church. I'm done with this. And she went completely spiritual, like, doing like tarot cards, all types of stuff. And she raised her son like that. But now he's at my age and he is completely atheist. That's not spiritual, not religious. And he was saying, I just think that all that stuff is completely made up. Like the way my mom went from Catholicism to spirituality and is trying to predict my future out of cards. Like he was just like, it's bogus. And I'm like, and he was like, so do you believe the Bible? And I'm like, I don't think of it like that. Like I think of it as like a book of riddles. Like each story is giving you a lesson. Like, each chapter has a overarching character that's like going through a series of life, like that applies to all of us, but the Bible may exaggerate it or twist it a little bit, but I still, not to say I don't believe that what the stuff happened, but people did write the book, so who knows? That was
People
so
wrote
long
it.
ago.
It was translated,
but
so many
nevertheless,
times.
It's still lessons. It's still something we can all learn from.
And there's a reason it still stands.
Facts.
And
still the number one
I feel
selling
like
book.
Religious like readings are powerful because depending on which one you're reading, like it can really evoke a strong emotion in you, like a spirit. You can really feel
Facts.
it. And that's how I feel when I read like Buddhist teachings. And, you know, people feel that from the Bible, people feel that from the Quran, but that's why they take it so seriously, because you can really invoke emotions just off reading a book. And I think you can evoke emotions like off reading different books as well, but the emotions that you like evoke from a religious book is just different.
Facts. So circling back to men's health, specifically mental health, I think that a lot of times, since men are taught, especially in the Black community, like to shun their emotions, that they don't understand the effects of other emotions and they kind of lack like emotional cues. But on social media, you mentioned how you're an empath. And for those of you who don't know, an empath is someone who feels strongly the feelings of others and energies of others. But you mentioned how you said you feel like you're carrying the pain of the world. And I feel like that's a huge thing with empaths. And I just want to know like how you navigate that as a male, but also just how you do that, how you navigate it and how you apply that to your life, to your writing, etc.
Well, first, I had to acknowledge that I was that, because it went back to my old training of, nah, you can't be soft, you can't be this or that. So I denied anything, about being an empath, but you can't deny what you are. Like you have a heightened sense, a heightened awareness of, other people around you, like especially people you love or whatever. It might be someone, the houseless folks, you walk down the street and it's like, it shouldn't be that way, but as we were talking about, good authors, how they can reach their audiences, being an empath is like a superpower.
Yeah, it is.
Because if I can impart some of my experiences and intertwine with things that y'all are going through, then that's the main potency of being identifiable and relatable as far as reader to writer and vice versa.
Right. So when did you realize you were an empath? Like, was there a moment or a time in your life?
I had a girlfriend in high school, and she was like hyper empath. Like, if a snail was ran over, in the street, she'd start crying and stuff, and I'd be clowning like, "Why are you crying?" Like, but inside, I was like, I get it. Like, she cares, just deeply, So that's when that was the inception where I was like, yeah, that's in me. I'm just not as extreme as she is. Whereas more, I was internal and I would write stuff down.
I think that's a huge thing with me. Like, man, maybe that's a theme in our family. I love to write. I just don't take it seriously, but I love to write. I always have, but I feel like, that's a huge thing. Like, if I'm ever feeling like a lot, or like you said, the pain of the world, like I really be feeling it, especially with my friends. Like, I feel like even with Layla, like if you're going through it, like I feel that deeply. And writing is my outlet, which leads me to my next question. I was going to ask, what is your outlet? Like, I know a lot of men nowadays, I don't know what they turn to, but it's stuff that ain't helping. Like a distraction more so than an outlet. So what is yours?
And people can only, have an outlet as far as their awareness and the resources. So what you have is a lot of people, they just wilding out because they don't know.
Yeah.
They don't
know. That's like everything, I feel like.
With myself is just surrounding myself with my tribe, whether it's family, friends, physical, play ball, hike. I love to hike. I read, I'm an avid reader. I meditate. I start every day. I get up. I thank the Most High, for opening my eyes. I'll go into a meditation for about 10 minutes. I might do some sun salutation, and then I'll read out my affirmations out loud. I look in the mirror. I'm brushing my teeth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I am grateful. I am magnificent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I am divinely guided. Like,
I like that.
all of that goes, you know, and just talk about how you can train your mind as the navigational center of who you are.
Right.
That's what you're doing at the beginning of the day.
Yeah.
It's like, I am this, I am that, you know,
Right.
I am
And
protected.
mm-hmm.
I am never alone.
Mm-hmm.
So when you know, put that into your mind, you're going to run across bumps in the road every day, but that's just going to reinforce like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Right.
but if you don't have those resources, imagine waking up in the gutter every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I'm just trying to eat. I'm trying to survive.
I'm just trying to survive.
Like, there's no such thing as affirmation. You might not even have a mirror to look in and say it.
Right.
So what kind of, you know, things you have to fall back on when you run into adversity?
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to
Right.
flip out, or you're just going to be primal,
Yeah.
you know? So that's where you have a lot of people. That's why people are clashing upon each other
Mm-hmm.
and having a lot of these issues in the world, you know? So
Yeah.
that's what I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you break it down to that, it's like, what if everybody just had that time to meditate or be grateful?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or,
What if they just knew?
Gratitude.
you know, or they just had a list, you know? I gave Nana a list the other day, like, yo, I read this every day. And she was like, for real? I was like, yeah. And I was like, you need to read this. You know how she gets. She
Yeah.
worries about everybody. She carries the pain and worry of the family, entire family.
She is an empath for real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, so I gave her that as a tool. So she's reading it.
That's interesting that you said that. This is kind of off topic, but I was really thinking about that. How Nana, like, hyper worrier. I've never seen nobody worry like that woman, but it's because she cares so much. But then
Mhm.
now I'm starting to see it in my mom
Oh,
so
yeah.
much.
I think it's a granny thing as they get older, because my granny,
Man,
she'll be like, you shouldn't be walking to the car alone. Like, girl.
You got to look at it from the standpoint of, you know, you're the matriarch of the family,
Yeah.
and you're looking down at everybody. You're looking at your own
and
children.
your time is
You're looking,
shortening.
Yeah.
at, you know, your grandchildren, people around you, and everybody's time is shortening because we don't know when we're going to go.
That's fine.
But they just have more time that they've lived, you know. And that's the beauty of it. Like, I always stay in between. Like, y'all represent the future. Y'all are both, 19, 20.
Yeah.
I met a guy recently on Tucson, which is a hike in Tucson, Arizona. And it's steep. It's got switchbacks, everything. I met a man one day, 90 years old, going up there. I was like, I couldn't believe it. It was amazing. So
I can barely get up that thing.
and he goes every day. And
Wow.
we talk, you know,
Cool.
I see him. And so I can look at him and I can say, okay, he's 90 years old and he's just giving downloads to me of the past. Then I can sit and talk to y'all and be like, yo, what's going to happen in the next 5 years, 10 years, whatever. Y'all can see into the future. So that's how I have that balance. It's like J. Cole said, I'm the middle child,
Yeah.
you know, of the generations.
Mhm.
So
Facts.
that's where you have to
Right.
find your place, your
Yeah.
lane in life is always have people that are older and younger. Like I said, loop back to the beginning. Everybody is your teacher. You can
I
learn
never
from
thought about
everybody.
it like that.
Yeah, because I think like older generations are more worried and very like anxious about stuff because we have to think about what they went through. Like I know my grandma when she was little, she literally picked cotton
Mhm.
and went through segregation. So like of course they're worried. They've seen like the worst of the worst.
Literally.
I think we're a little more sheltered.
Yeah.
We're like the generation of nitpicking and like really sensitive. So
Yeah.
you know, we're very sheltered from actual like generational trauma compared to our ancestors. So we're not as worried about things like that, whereas they
True.
are.
True.
So
And,
you definitely see it.
and y'all
the
don't know
difference.
life without like tablets,
Phone.
technology.
Yeah, and that's huge.
that's huge because like I'm a millennial, so I'm analog and digital.
Mhm.
So I remember a time where I didn't have a phone.
Yeah.
Like where you go to school, you walk to school with your friends. Like you didn't text nobody, you couldn't call your mom. You had to go to a payphone and run to somebody's house and ask them to use a phone.
Those were the days. You leave school and it's
Yeah.
over.
But
Yeah.
you had so many numbers committed to your mind. But look at how now it's like I don't got to commit nothing. I got 100 numbers in my phone. I don't have to memorize that one.
And I think we also feel safer because it's like we could, if we're anywhere, we could just call
But
911. We
But
could
this
do
the
this.
thing though.
We can
If-
use our phone to get comfort.
But here's the thing though. If I lost my phone right now, I'll go into a frenzy of panic. I don't know your number by heart.
Mm-hmm.
Facts.
I don't know my parents, my best friends, or
Yeah.
female friend, whatever. I don't. So that's where it's kind of
True.
put us at a disadvantage.
Definitely.
You know?
I've noticed that with my mom because her memory's so good, especially with phone numbers. But she always said it's because, like phone books, that's all we had. Nobody's trying to look through a phone book, so you memorize it.
Mm-hmm.
And she always memorized numbers. And I only memorized her and my dad's and my grandma's.
Yeah.
That's inactive now. So.
I remember seeing my dad, getting the text message from my dad from the first time. I just busted out laughing.
That is crazy.
He, there's nothing he had. He said with the, not the thumb, but the pointer, so... And then just texting every day, like, yeah, man, you see LeBron, da, 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 da. I'm like, he's texting like, you don't know how to do this. Like,
that's crazy. And it's crazy to see older generations get hip to technology. Like, what you mean you know how to work an iPhone now? That's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's so simple for us, but so hard for them.
Yeah, because
they refuse.
You were born with that. You don't know a life without that. They had to learn this older, in their life where it's like,
by the time we were in middle school, so basically.
I remember getting an iPad. So.
Yeah. I want to talk more about being an empath and just the relationship with being an empath and I think ego. I think that's a huge thing. I feel like being an empath, especially feeling the pain of the world, it's because you have no ego. That's when you're like the most empathetic because you understand that everyone and every living being is all one. We're all the same. So you're able to feel that emotion. And I think a lot of us are empaths have a lot of depressive states more than other people because like stuff affects us, like the news, what's going on in Afghanistan, what's going on in Iran, like stuff like that affects us, whereas other people can just turn it off and just go back into their reality. So can you talk about your ego and how that relates to being an empath?
And how you're able to put your ego aside, especially being a man.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to sit up here in front like I have an ego.
Really?
My ego is what helped me fight off the ropes of depression, where it's like, nah, not me. Like,
interesting.
You think, nah, it's not going down. So everybody has an ego, and especially, like I said, as a black male, it's like, nah, like we deal with heightened sense of a plight or whatever on the daily. So it's like you have to be strong or you have to be able to, roll with the punches. But you just have to balance both. You can't allow the ego to tip the scale and the empath part to kind of disappear. So I just keep that in mind, and that's how I live my life. But yeah, I absolutely have an ego. Like I had to check it,
How
every
do you
morning.
check it?
Meditation, self-evaluation, constant self-evaluation. I might have a conversation with somebody and be like, I kind of was flexing kind of hard right there. I need to chill for that. So, and a lot of people do not self-evaluate.
And
a lot of people don't self-evaluate. Like, I actually wrote something to the effect of, I come off as argumentative, not because.
I like this one.
Yeah.
You said I come off as argumentative, not because I'm trying to be right, but because I'm trying to do right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that hit me.
So I get into a lot of fights with people closest to me, my friends, and they think like I'm a contrarian because it's like, just yesterday we were laughing about this, but I'm like, today I'm trying to evolve. Like I don't want to laugh at that.
Right. My perspective changed.
My perspective changed,
Wow.
So I deal with that, And sometimes you say, "Oh, you're trying to be too self-righteous." No, I'm trying to grow.
Yeah.
Fact. See, I remember when I seen that on your socials, I was like, yeah, and that's a huge reason why I fall back. I feel like in so many conversations because it's like I'm not perfect and I'm nobody's teacher, but it's like at the same time, maybe their perspective can evolve. Maybe it can change because maybe they're looking at it from a negative point of view, but then it's the ego. Like people need to put their ego aside and their pride aside and be able to hear other perspectives and be able to face that part of themselves that they don't like and be able to self-evaluate. And I feel like that's a huge reason that people don't. It's just the ego and
we can't change anybody. We're all at different stages. That's why also you have to check yourself. Like you could start climbing and growing, but you have to realize maybe that person's comfortable where they're at. They don't want to budge. They don't want to move.
They'll get it one day.
Yeah, it's for them to be on their own path, So I always keep that in mind.
And you have the choice of who you could converse with and spend time with. And, You know, if you see someone's not growing and you're going to a different level, you don't have to be around that person. Like, there's people that are on your level. Everything, I almost feel like every thought that we have is not original. Like, anytime I think something, if I look it up, someone probably wrote about it. Someone probably said it before, even if it was like 200 years ago.
We are one.
I think it's so easy to find people on your level that are on the same thing as you, that can have those conversations, and actually you can learn from them rather than being around people that lower your knowledge or make you resort back to being ignorant.
And you can't change nobody. That's the hardest thing.
That part.
You know, I think, you know, and y'all can speak to this, I mean, obviously better than I can, but I think it's more of a propensity of females to try to want to change somebody.
Yeah.
So that's why
that mother complex.
Yeah, so that's why y'all are so apt to dip out when it's like, I'm done with you. Like, I've given you my time. I tried to change you, but that's the drawback. You can't change nobody.
Yeah, they said,
you know,
someone in a podcast said, like, women will try to create a super nigga. Like, they'll see, like, the outline of a nigga and he'll have a couple good things, but they'll create a super nigga in their head and be like, I can fix him into this. Whereas men see women for what they are, and they might have a couple other on the side that have the missing pieces. But women will be like, no, this one, like, I'm going to make him into this.
I'm going to make him the dream one. But it's like,
you can't do it.
It's awesome.
It never works.
You got to accept the flaws of each person.
If you can't accept the flaws and you don't love them for who they are in that moment,
you can help them grow.
Then they're not the one for y'all.
And it's really love when you can learn the flaws. Like,
Facts.
If you want to try to change or manipulate somebody into something else, then you should be with that person.
That's a huge thing, I think, with my parents. Like, my dad ain't never going to change, but my mom accepted it.
Yeah.
And she works with it, and they work with each other. It's just communicating and finding the balance. But last question of the day is, what do you think is the most recurrent life lesson and the biggest current life lesson that you are, you know, seeing and growing upon?
Let go and trust the universe. That sums it all up. As long as I do that, then there are infinite possibilities within my grasp, you know, and I've seen it. So I just keep trusting it, you know.
That's facts. I think
we aren't in control. We think we're in control. We don't control.
It's tough to say that.
We don't control Nathan. So, but if you trust it and you live in the moment, then that's your eternity. Eternity is in the moment. Right now, what we have, this moment's never going to be again, but it's eternal.
I always think about that. Like, I think that was my huge lesson of my freshman year of college, was just acceptance.
And let God.
Yeah, facts. And just accept. Like, accept where I'm at. Like, all right, I'm depressed right now, but that's right now. I'm going to get out of this. Or, like, I'm doing horrible in the class right now, but I got to accept it and I got to do better. Like, I can't keep worrying and dwelling, living in my thoughts about what I did and what I could have done, but I just got to do.
And y'all went to college early, 17, 16. So, I mean, that's like back when in antiquity, when they were going off on voyages, like, they had to kill their own food and stuff. It's no different than that. So
we were gathering.
Yeah, he was doing all that. So you have to, you know, there's a difference in time, but imagine someone from that time, antiquity, doing what you're doing, like going to a campus and seeing all these people and what are these things? Books, I got to learn, I got to sit here. Like, they wouldn't have been equipped to that. So there's respect both ways.
Facts. Acceptance, let go, and let the universe, let God.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Our first guest.
Yes, it was great. So all you guys, all you men who are watching, tap into your health this month, tap into your mental health this month, self-evaluate, grow, and I hope y'all enjoyed it.
Yes, we'll link both books in the description box below if you guys want to check them out. And thank you so much for watching.
Yes. See you next time.